Dr. Stephen Gundry is a former cardiac surgeon who currently runs his own clinic investigating the impact of diet on health, best known for his plant paradox diet research. He went from being a top cardiac surgeon and a pioneer in infant heart transplant surgery to becoming a researcher and a best-selling author focused on cutting-edge human nutrition. Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 on We Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Dr. Stephen Gundry, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1, acquire the right habits.
What are some of the things you learned through the process over the last couple of years that people were finding out about themselves and discovering about other things? You've got this new book about living longer, longevity paradox. So what were some of the things that you've learned over the last couple of years about health in general with people?
So I think one of the things that was probably one of the most controversial statements in the plant paradox was that it's your bad health is not your fault.
It's your DNA, right? It's your genes?
Yeah, it's your genes and DNA. And I go into a lot of this in the longevity paradox, that in fact, your genes have very little to do with what's going to happen to you, in both, in the immediate period and in long term. And there's a big, huge study looking at millions of people around the world, and their outcome, looking at their genetics, their DNA, and their DNA has only probably about a 6% influence on you, your health, what's going to happen to you. So that means
including like diseases you might pick up. So why do we always, when we go to the doctor, they say, well, did your father have a stroke or a heart attack? Did your mother have dementia?
So when I ask that question, and I do, what that tells me is that if your mother had diabetes or your father had coronary artery disease, that tells me that if you eat like your parents did, then you will most likely have those diseases, not because you inherited that from your parents, but you learned to eat from your parents. And it actually goes beyond that. Not only did you learn to eat from your parents, but you shared the microbiome, the bugs in your gut that your parents had. In fact, as we talk about in the book, you can take identical twins and raise them apart, and they will actually have microbiomes more in common with the family that they were raised with than their identical twin. And the outcome, health outcomes of those identical twins will not parallel genetics. They will parallel the microbiome that they acquired living with that other family.
Rule number 2, get lectins out of your diet.
Lectins are plant proteins that are one of the major defense systems of a plant against being eaten. One of the things that's hard for us to conceptualize is that plants do not want to be eaten. They actually have a life, and they were actually here first. When insects arrived, plants had a problem because they couldn't run, they couldn't fight, they couldn't hide, but they have a huge advantage, and that's they're chemists. They can turn sunlight into matter, and we haven't figured out how to do that yet. So what they do is they make proteins that are sometimes called sticky proteins, or lectins, that stick to certain sugar molecules in us, particularly in our gut lining. Just by the way, if anybody has sinusitis or runny noses when they eat certain foods, you are actually producing sugar molecules in your mucus to trap lectins. And I have so many people who had chronic sinusitis, including myself, when we finally got lectins out of our diet, they completely went away. So lectins bind to sugar molecules, Lectins cause the wall of our gut to actually separate, and people have heard the term leaky gut. I used to, if you'd asked me 15 years ago if I thought leaky gut was a problem, I would have said it was pseudoscience. Now, with the advances in understanding how the microbiome works and in understanding how lectins work, I think everyone who has a disease has a leaky gut. Now, I'm pretty dumb. Hippocrates said this 2,500 years ago, that all disease begins in the gut. So one of the things we know about research is research. Look again, because somebody already knew this, and Hippocrates knew it 2,500 years ago.
Rule number 3, rethink comfort food.
Have you ever had one of those days where you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed? You're cranky, grumpy, and just plain off. The worst part, when you're having a lousy day, can just seem like nothing is going to turn your mood around. Maybe you try a nap, meditation, exercise, but still the mood just sticks around. Well, when it comes to lousy moods, and possibly even bigger mental health problems, there's one thing you may not be considering. Now let's get back to that lousy mood and the one incredibly effective thing you may not be trying. It all comes down to one really interesting scientific phenomenon, the gut-brain axis. Now, I could talk about the gut-brain axis all day, but for now, I'll just explain the quick version. To put it simply, your gut and your brain actually communicate with one another through your nervous system. It's actually pretty strong two-way communication. For example, when you're stressed, your brain lets your gut know, which is why so many people report having a nervous stomach when there's something stressful going on. And when your stomach is upset, for whatever reason, it can actually impact your mood, your energy level, and even your ability to focus. It's no wonder some scientists call your gut your second brain. It's got such a profound effect on the way you feel, body and mind, which is why, if you're struggling with a lousy mood, it might be time to look at your diet. And no, I'm not just talking about grabbing some carb-heavy comfort food, though a piece of dark chocolate is scientifically proven to lift your spirits. I'm talking about rethinking comfort food and going for options that comfort your gut. Because when your gut is balanced, your mood stays lifted. After all, some of the most important hormones are produced in the gut, like serotonin, the feel-good hormone, and GABA, which helps you manage stress and anxiety. In fact, GABA is actually produced by your gut bugs. Clearly, keeping your gut happy goes a long way to keeping your spirits lifted.
Rule number 4, fix your eating pattern.
One of the weird things about our computer program is, like Tony Robbins is always fun to say, we run version 1.0 of our operating system. We've never had an upgrade. And the same goes to the foods and the plants and the fruit we eat. So we were supposed to eat fruit once a year. And when we were eating fruit, our brain says, oh my gosh, it's summer. Winter is right around the corner. You know, we should eat this stuff because winter's a tough time, whether it's dry season, a rainy season, a cold season. And we better store up fat. Just like a bear. You know, a bear's eating all those blueberries and huckleberries, and they're storing fat for the winter. Right. So if you're eating blueberries at Costco in February that came from Chile, your operating system doesn't know it's February. It says, heck, it's August, and winter's right around the corner, so I better eat some more of this stuff. And this is one of the things that's happening to us in particularly American society, but now most of the Western countries.
Yeah.
We're eating things that we have no business eating 365 days a year. And most of us are just getting ready for the winter that never comes.
Especially if you live in L.A.
Yeah.
It's never getting cold.
Yeah, never comes.
You don't need to store that fat.
You really don't. Yeah, but that's part of the problem.
Also, if you want to have more self-love, motivation, and confidence, check out my 254 series. They're free. The links to join are in the description below.
Doesn't matter how talented you are, if you don't have self-belief, you're not going to get anywhere.
I believe when you wake up, you should get up. The second you wake up, get your feet hit the floor. Move into action.
If you're going to speak effectively, you have to know way more than you're talking about.
Rule number 5, drink coffee.
If you read an article saying that coffee is unhealthy, I want to put that myth to rest once and for all and tell you, coffee is healthy for you. Unless your doctor tells you otherwise, it's fine to drink coffee. In fact, regular coffee drinkers are shown to burn fat faster, enjoy improved energy and focus, and even have an easier time with their blood sugar. Plus, there's also some links between long-term cognitive health and coffee drinking. So, if you happen to love coffee and your doctor says it's okay, go ahead, drink up. Just don't add sugar or A1 milk to the mix. Those are what makes coffee unhealthy.
Rule number 6, understand the power of bacteria.
What I'm trying to get people to understand is this is not about you and me or what we conceive as us. We're just a condominium for the people who really run us, and these are all these little one-cellular organisms. And what we're beginning to realize is we're a condominium for these bugs. And we're their home. We've exchanged them living in us and actually taking care of us for food and shelter for them.
Huh.
And
it's crazy.
I know. And the really cool thing is, so we can take bacteria from young animals, and put them into old animals. And the bacteria say, man, this place is decrepit. I need to do a complete total renovation here because this is where I'm stuck and I better make the best of it. Mm-hmm. And I want everything to be nice. It's like, gentrification of the neighborhood. And this actually...
So what do they do?
So they actually instruct. Here's the take-home message. They actually send text messages to the mitochondria, and you probably know all about mitochondria, the little energy organelles.
Yes. In the brain, right?
In every one of you, but the brain has the most of them. And these produce energy. These mitochondria are actually engulfed bacteria. And as strange as it may seem, the bacteria in your gut send text messages to the mitochondria that say, guys, new sheriff's in town, clean up your act. We want you guys working and humming on all, 8 cylinders. It's kind of like General Kelly coming into the White House and total disarray. And he's going, okay, guys, no more of this silliness. And so we now have discovered some of those compounds that the bacteria in your gut signal the mitochondria to regenerate themselves, and it's opening up whole new areas that we never even dreamed of.
Rule number 7, avoid certain foods.
I think the first thing you do is get major lectin-containing foods out of your diet. You won't like me for a couple of weeks, but most people, even within a couple of weeks, begin to notice a difference. Now, what are those? They're foods that we actually, evolutionary, were not designed to eat. Beans are so lethal raw that there's very good published studies in humans that they can cause massive bloody diarrhea. And there's some pretty good studies in monkeys, rhesus monkeys, and red velvet monkeys that they can actually cause heart disease and even kidney damage from the lectin content. What's fascinating from a human evolution standpoint is that humans, up until the dawn of agriculture, were actually very tall creatures. Most humans were about 6 feet tall, and our brain size was about 15% bigger than it is today. And if you look chronologically, by 8,000 years, 2,000 years into grain and bean eating, we actually shrunk about a foot, and our brain size has never recovered from 10,000 years ago. So these are anti-nutrients, grains and beans.
Rule number 8, choose vegetables first.
No matter what your fitness goals look like, you don't need to chow down on a steak to reach them. And you don't need a giant whey protein smoothie or one made with healthier pea, oat, or brown rice protein. The truth is, those are loaded with lectins. No, all you need is a healthy, balanced diet where vegetables come first. And stuff like meat is just a garnish rather than the main event. Sounds a little like the plant paradox plan, right? Well, that's because the plant paradox plan is the perfect diet for athletes because it's a great way to make sure you're eating enough vegetables. And veggies are essential for building strong muscles. So, throw out that big tub of basic protein powder and focus on fueling your body with protein-rich, plant-based whole foods like avocados, nuts, and greens. If you must drink a protein drink, look for a powder that's the plant paradox compliant, something like hemp, algae, or flax-based proteins. And remember, you really don't need more than 20 grams of animal protein a day. That's about 3 eggs or 3 ounces of grass-fed, grass-finished beef.
Rule number 9, reduce the meat intake.
You don't eat a lot of meat. Why not?
So we found that there was a molecule, a sugar molecule, on the wall of pig blood vessels that's totally different from the sugar molecule that's in ours. But it differs by only one, actually, atom. And it's called Nu5GC in pigs, cows, and lambs. And we carry what's called Nu5AC. And I have nothing against red meat. But if you look statistically, the red meat eaters do have significantly more coronary artery disease and significantly more cancer. Now, why cancer? Well, it turns out that cancer tumors in humans use Nu5GC to shield themselves from detection by the immune system. The problem is we don't manufacture Nu5GC, nor can a cancer cell, which means they acquired it from external sources, namely beef, lamb, and pork. Now, fish doesn't carry it. They have the same molecule that we do, and chicken have the same molecule that we do. So I urge people, if they're going to eat animal protein, and I do, to use wild shellfish or wild fish as their main source of animal protein. Do I eat meat? Yeah, I mean, do I eat beef? I do. But I get grass-fed and grass-finished beef, and I use it as a treat, not as a mainstay of my diet.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is know your body.
What we've completely missed from the Human Genome Project is that we have actually very few genes, and our genes are about 99% the same as a chimp or a gorilla. And we're very different than chimps or gorillas, and yet we have virtually the same genes. What makes us different is actually the bacteria and viruses that live in us.
We have different bacteria and viruses.
And you can actually show when humans evolved from the other great apes that our bacteria actually changed, and we can actually identify that point in time that the bacteria made us rather than our genes made us.
So the bacteria's made us human, or bacteria made us?
Yeah, they actually, as shocking as it may seem, most of what happens to us is determined by the state and the variation of our bacteria, primarily in our gut. Give you an example. You can take a bowel movement from an obese individual and feed it to a skinny rat. Skinny rats love to eat poop.
Right.
And those skinny rats will become fat.
Really?
Because the bacteria have actually manipulated their feeding habits. They actually send text messages to the brain to go look for foods that they would not otherwise consume that those bacteria want. And we can actually, there was a cool study in a marathon runner. You're a great athlete. So there's a woman marathon runner in England a couple of years ago who developed a very severe infection in her colon called C. difficile. A lot of people have heard of it. Okay. And the modern treatment of this now is a fecal transplant, taking poop from somebody else and shoving it up your ass.
Wow.
And you try to get a fecal transplant from a family member because, believe it or not, family members tend to share their bacteria. I share a lot of bacteria with my dogs, and they share with me. So they found a cousin who was a good match for her, and she got the fecal transplant, and everything went well. Her C. difficile went away. We can go into why that happened. But in the next year, this marathon runner gained 32 pounds. Wow. Without changing anything. And it turns out her cousin, was actually about 32 pounds overweight. And so she was inoculated with obesogenic bacteria. And her bacteria, these little, one-cell organisms, controlled her behavior.
Now I've got a special bonus clip from Dr. Gundry on how to have balance that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I want to know, what's the biggest lesson you learned from this video that you're going to apply to your life? Let me know. Share your wisdom. Put it down in the comments below. And if you made it this far in the video, you're still here watching, I want to celebrate you because Believe Nation, we don't just watch videos, we do something about it. So if that's you and you commit, you promise you're going to take action immediately after watching this video, give me a hashtag Believe down in the comments and tell me where you're from because I want to celebrate you.
We had no idea. No one had sequenced the human microbiome. That was really only 5 years ago. Well, now, since the sequencing of the human microbiome, it's, you go, well, of course, there were 10,000 different species of bacteria in you and me. And in fact, a month ago, they found another 1,000. And normally there are beautiful checks and balances. But it's when these checks and balances get disturbed by taking a round of antibiotics or as simply as eating meat where the chicken or the pork or the beef was given antibiotics. When we eat that, they have residual antibiotics in them and we eat the antibiotics.
If you want to see the top 10 I did on Deepak Chopra, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
They say that love without action is irrelevant, and action without love is meaningless. But when you have love in action,